Welcome back. You're still watching on Metropol Television's Business M20146 is your SMS line at Metropol TVKE across all your social media platforms. Let's continue with Irina Were. She's the KRA officer in charge of taxpayer services. So Irina, when we're talking about that, well, persons living with disabilities are exempt from some taxes. What happens when you're filing your tax returns? Are we telling them not to file the tax returns? Could you explain the process? Because you might be surprised most people would not know entirely what to do when you tell them, well, you're tax exempt, but at the same time, you're telling them, well, file your returns.
Okay, first and foremost, we say that people living with disability are given an exemption certificate. Now, at the end of the year, we do expect them to file returns. So why do we expect them to file returns? Number one, it's important for us to realize that the tax exemption is only applicable to direct taxes. When I say direct taxes, I mean it's applicable to income taxes. For example, employment income. You see, you go and work, your employer pays you salary. That is a direct tax. You do business, you get profit. That is a direct tax. So this exemption is only applicable to direct taxes. Sometimes you might find someone living with disability is doing business and is registered under the value-added tax, or has some rental buildings and is registered under the annual regime, which are indirect taxes in this case. So the exemption certificate will only cover them on the part of the direct tax, like the employment income, but will not cover them on value-added tax. So the reason why we ask them to file returns is they can be able to declare both direct taxes and indirect taxes. Secondly, when we talk about the exemption certificate, it has some extent of exemption. The law currently provides for the first 150,000 per month or an annual of 1.8 million.
Yes.
So you might guess this person is employed, but earns a salary of more than 150,000 per month, or more than 1.8 million per annum. It means at the end of the day, he is still in a tax payable position, the above limit, more than 1.8. So the reason why we ask them to file is they could also be getting more than what the law provides as the exemption.
So let's talk about the other intricacies that normally happen when maybe we're talking about transfer of property. If I would buy a product from somebody who probably would not be liable to pay that direct tax, I, as the person who's assuming that product's ownership, am I going to cover for the tax that was not paid by this person living with disability?
So if someone living with disability imports an item,
yes,
I'll take a good example of a motor vehicle. He or she will be exempted from paying import duty and value-added tax. But on the other hand, he will pay import declaration fee at the rate of 2% and railway development levy at the rate of 1.5%. So it's not like entirely. There are some things that will be exempted, like the value-added tax and the import duty exempt.
Yes.
So if this person living with disability decides to transfer this vehicle to, quote unquote, a normal person, number one, the law provides that he should have been in possession of the vehicle for at least 4 years. And upon the transfer, now the new buyer will have to pay the import duty that was foregone by this person living with disability. Remember, we said they're exempted from paying value-added tax and import duty. So the normal person will need to pay the import duty that was foregone by a person living with disability.
Yes. Yes. That is upon the transfer of, let's say, this vehicle, isn't it?
Yeah. But again, the person living with disability should have stayed with the vehicle for at least 4 years.
When you look at that regulation, Irina, what is it really trying to protect KRA from?
People taking advantage,
yes,
and it's a revenue leakage.
Pretty much. So is there any regulation again under this provision for people living with disability that protects KRA from people taking advantage of this provision that we would like to know about this morning?
Yes, exactly, because you can imagine if these provisions are not there,
Yes.
someone can import a vehicle, the big vehicles, we know them, then after 3 months, transfers it to someone else duty free. So as a way to avoid revenue leakage, loss of revenue, that is why we have these stringent measures.
So let's talk about how Kenyans and majority of Kenyans therefore are using this provision within KRA. How would you say they're using it? Are we there yet in terms of people with disability in the country recognizing that KRA really takes care of them when it comes to the payment of taxes?
For sure we do.
Yes.
Now, I'll take a good example like the taxpayer services where we are. We have organized for something called the focus group discussions in collaboration with the National Council of People Living with Disability. Now, these focus group discussions have an aim of understanding the challenges and experiences faced with people living with disability when it comes to getting the tax exemption. So we try to help them improve the customer experience as well as complying with the tax laws. Now, if they have any difficulty, sometimes they have difficulties. They don't know that the certificate is supposed to be renewed after 5 years.
Yes.
There's some who have certificates, but they don't know they're supposed to present it to their employer, or you could find they presented it to the employer, but the employer did not exempt them. So we try to improve on their customer experience through holding stakeholder engagements and taxpayer education. We educate them on their rights and obligations. Now, for instance, if in the process of educating them on their rights and obligations, they realize that they presented a valid certificate, but they were still taxed, then we advise them on the option of applying for a refund.
So when you look at the number of people that are actually going to the Disability Council to apply for them to be recognized as people with infirmity in the country, vis-a-vis the number of people that you have on your portal that are applying for this provision, would you say that majority of them have recognized the advantage of using this provision within KRA?
I would say majority.
Yes.
But again, when it comes to KRA, someone has to be more than 18 years to get a KRA pin.
Yes.
Yeah, so majority of them, and also we can only help those who have KRA pins. Not help, we can only facilitate those with KRA pins.
Yes. So is that the only measure that is going to give you the number of people then who are using that provision within KRA?
Not per se.
Yes.
Like the most data that we rely on is the recommendations from the National Council of People Living with Disability.
Yes.
Because when they visit the council, first you visit the council, you apply, then there is the medical board. They have to look through this person, ascertain whether or not it's a disability, get clearance certificate from the board, from the medical board. Then it's upon getting the clearance from the medical board, that's the National Council of People Living with Disability will apply on iTax saying person A is disabled, kindly facilitate getting a tax exemption. So not until we get the clearance from the National Council of People Living with Disability,
Yes.
our hands are a little bit tied up.
Pretty much. I get exactly how
Our process is dependent on them.
So I get exactly how that system is also dependent on the council with people living with disability. But I mean, what in the case that somebody who's actually qualified for this provision within KRA, again, qualifies for tax? What is the remedial action? What should I do to reverse this process?
If you are qualified under the exemption certificate, number one, you had a clearance with the National Council of People Living with Disability.
Yes.
Then by the time you are taxed, you had a valid tax exemption certificate, but still your employer went ahead to tax you. You have the option of applying for a refund. But when you're applying for a refund, you also need to attach the necessary documentations to support your claim. For example, for someone who is employed and claims that the employer taxed this person,
yes.
he or she has to apply through the iTax portal for a refund, then has to put necessary documentations. In this case would be a P9 form, then a copy of the tax exemption certificate, If he or she has subscribed to insurances, then has to also put the insurance certificate. And if the claim is legal or justified, we'll get a refund within 90 days.
Within 90 days of the claim. Does it go
Of pres-
through, yes, does it go through the normal process online through the KRA portal?
Yes, yes, yes. We treat everybody equal.
Yes, so I don't have
Yes.
to come to the KRA offices for me to physically present these documents for you to make that claim.
No, actually, this is how we're doing. You
Yes.
don't need to come physically. We are trying to automate our systems such that taxpayers can be helped from wherever place they are. So once you lodge the claim, according to a service level agreement, will take 90 days for the refund claim to be processed. So in the process that it takes more than 90 days, upon providing necessary documentation and your refund has not been processed yet, then taxpayer services will always come and facilitate you. You can either call our numbers 0711 0711 099 999, 0711 099 999, or send an email to callcenter@kra.go.ke, callcenter@kra.go.ke. There's a fully fledged division, taxpayer services, which deals with complaints resolution. We'll be able to fast track your complaint and ensure that you paid your refund as soon as possible.
So just to cap this conversation, everybody's talking about the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, and this is a time that you'd expect that, well, people are well aware and need that cushioning from the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. Would you say that you've seen a rise probably from the persons living with disabilities in the country applying for this tax exemption?
Yeah. I would say I've seen a rise, especially with regards to the stakeholder engagement and taxpayer education forums that we are holding.
Yes.
Many who did not know about their rights, who did not know about tax exemption certificates, are now coming on board to take advantage of the tax exemption certificate. So I would say there is a big rise in number.
Pretty much. Irene Were, thank you very much for joining us this morning here on Metropol TV's Business AM, just to talk about that special offering within KRA that exempts persons living with disabilities from paying the direct tax. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
On that note, we take a short break, but once we come back, your economic review.